Hey everyone, Aaron here, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is a follow-up, sort of a part 2 to yesterday's video about Scientology ramping up its attacks on Mike Rinder in advance of his book coming out on September 27th. Hands down, the most egregious aspect of Scientology's attacks on Mike Rinder have to do with this fraudulent campaign that they have been waging using Mike's wife and using Mike's daughter, trying to get Mike deplatformed and advertisers to pull out for any of the variety of the projects that Mike has been engaged with, using these false claims that Mike caused permanent injury to his then wife, now ex-wife, during an incident back in 2010. In yesterday's video, I made brief mention of it, I just glossed over it. But in today's video, I want to show you exactly what Scientology has done. What makes this so incredible that they have tried to spin this incident into something that has no reflection on reality is that the incident was recorded. It was recorded by a BBC journalist, John Sweeney. And not only that, there is medical documentation. So you've got medical documentation, medical records, and an audio recording that completely disproves everything Scientology is saying about what happened in this incident. And yet, they do it anyway. I want to jump right into it, but here's the setting. It's 2010. Mike Rinder left Scientology in 2007. He first spoke out publicly in the Tampa Bay Times in 2009. In 2010, Mike Rinder learned that his son Benjamin, who was still in Scientology, still a member of the Sea organization, had been diagnosed with some form of skin cancer, and that Scientology intentionally withheld this information from Mike. So Mike showed up to the Fort Harrison Hotel in Clearwater, Florida, where he knew Benjamin worked, and demanded to be allowed to see Ben. Scientology wouldn't allow Mike into the building, and Scientology wouldn't allow Mike's son to come out and speak to him. Now remember, at this point, Mike's already been out of Scientology for a few years. He was living in the Clearwater, Florida area, and he was in a relationship with Christy Colburn. I mean, they're still in a relationship. They are married. But at this time in 2010, even though Mike and Christy were together and Christy was pregnant and they were having a baby, they couldn't get married because Scientology was refusing to complete the paperwork required in order for Mike and his now ex-wife, Cathy, to finalize a divorce. This was one of the ways Scientology was trying to screw with Mike. It also allowed Cathy to say, whenever she spoke to the media crapping on Mike, to say that she was his wife, not ex-wife. People might pay less attention to an ex-wife complaining about a guy, but if it's your current wife, people tend to pay a little bit more attention. So just keep that in mind because it factors into what I'm about to play for you. So in response to Mike showing up to the Fort Harrison Hotel demanding to speak with Ben, Scientology sends 5 of its members to Clearwater to follow Mike around, to secretly follow him and wait for the right moment to ambush him in, well, what I'm about to play for you, you're going to see what plays out. And they did this ambush in the parking lot of a healthcare provider where Christy was at for an appointment relating to her pregnancy. While Christy was in the doctor's office having her appointment, Mike was in the parking lot on the phone with BBC journalist John Sweeney. He was recording this phone call, and the following is what happened.
Hello. Hi, Mike. Sorry, I don't know why we got cut off there.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Okay. So essentially, you did sign depositions or affidavits at this period, but you certainly didn't. You didn't lie, and you didn't ask anybody else to lie.
Hey, John. Guess what?
I'm sorry, I'm going to try not to pause it too much. You see, they instantly approach him, cursing at him. Now, quick, they're going to give some names on this screen, but I want to tell everyone in advance. When you see JS in the transcript here, that's John Sweeney. CR is Cathy Rinder, Mike's ex-wife, then wife. DB is David Bloomberg, Scientology executive who works out of California. Cathy Rinder also works out of California. JL is Jenny Linson, one of Scientology's most senior managers, also works out of California. AR is Andrew Rinder, that is Mike Rinder's brother, who was flown to Florida from Australia just for this ambush of Mike Rinder. And TR is Taryn Rinder, Mike's daughter, who's also a Scientology Sea Org member, who also works out of California. All right.
In the parking lot.
I don't care.
I can, I'm afraid. Who's that? Hello?
You deserted your family! You won't talk to your family!
You deserted your family, you won't talk to your family, you won't see your family. Mike had just gone to the Fort Harrison Hotel to see Ben and was refused access to Ben. This is the kind of stuff that Scientology does just to try to get into your head and to make you question yourself, just to provoke a reaction out of you. But you're going to see later, they also try to tell him to leave Benjamin alone. But here they're saying, you deserted your family, you won't talk to your family, you won't see your family.
Your daughter's here, your wife is here,
I'll talk to
you deserted your family! You deserted your family, you piece of shit! You deserted your family! You walked out on your family! You tried right down! Your family tried to throw you right down!
Charles.
With me! Stop it! You're taking my home!
Charles.
You're taking my church! You're taking everything I believe in belong! You belong here!
It's fine, Cathy.
It's your family from here!
Talk to me, Michael.
Talk to your family!
Mike, are you okay?
Don't be a dick. Don't be a... Talk to me. Talk to me, but not with all these... Talk to me now. Come on. I can't get in the car. You don't know what's taken for me to get to Texas. You have no idea what I've got to go through. It's just not okay. You can't do this to me. Andrew. You can't. It's my life, Mike. It's mine, too. I saw it, and you just do this to me, okay?
Mike,
You're breaking my finger. I'm not. Please.
Mike, can you...
Brother! Stop
Talk to
talking
me.
to your brother!
Talk to me. I will talk to you in the car.
Your brother!
Do you see this? Jenny is saying, talk to your brother. Mike is saying, get in the car. I will talk to you. And his brother is saying, I can't get in the car. These people who showed up, they have marching orders. They're not there to actually talk to Mike. They're there to fuck with Mike.
You cannot drive up to me. I told you more. I want to talk to you. I will talk to you in the car. You get in the car, I'll talk to you. Okay, now drive off. Take the keys out. I will get in the car. My sunglasses. Put them on the side over there. Don't you go anywhere, right? I'm not going anywhere. I'll get it done. Just shut the door, guys. Okay, Dave, go ahead. Shut the door. Oh, Jenny, you're really helping. Forget it, Andrew. Forget it. I've come a long way. Don't do that. It's not okay, Andrew.
Hello? Hello?
My understanding is that Andrew was trying to take the car keys away from Mike.
Hi, Mike, it's John. I'd
be lucky if you would
Look what you did.
call the police.
Look what you did to your wife.
Call the Clearwater police and send them to...
Look what you did to your wife. Look what you just did to your wife.
So somewhere in the scuffle regarding the keys and the phones and whatever was going on, Cathy's arm got scratched, and the scratch was bleeding. And then this is what happens.
Call the Clearwater police. What number? What's the address? Could you tell the others that I'm recording this conversation and we want to use it for broadcasting purposes?
I just want to let everyone know that this whole conversation is being recorded by the BBC.
That's right, because you're right. And your daughter came to see you, and you disconnected from them. They came to see you, and you won't see them.
Did you get that on tape, John? Good.
Yes.
Me, so that's a 5.
Very good. Who was talking there?
Mike. That was Jenny the Rock.
I said fine to you. I didn't say fine to them. Your family came to see you, and you...
Jenny just realized that she messed up by agreeing on the record to have the phone call recorded.
Don't talk to them.
Oh, fuck off, you little shit.
Stop it, Mike.
Jenny, piss off.
Kathy's talking to you. It's I'm you.
You've got a little
No, I don't. No, I don't. You won't see your family.
Just stop for a minute.
Your family is here to see you, and you refuse to talk to them. That's the truth. You won't talk to me, Mike.
Right, but you can talk to me. I'll talk to you. I told you already I'll talk to you. I got it. I'm happy to talk to you. But I won't talk to you with that little bitch shouting in the background, I got it, etc.
Who's Mike?
I am.
Can you come here, please? You're not welcome. His wife is going with him. His wife is going.
These assholes are now dragging this entire confrontation into the doctor's office. And you see Cathy there going, I'm his wife. I'm his wife. She hasn't seen him in 3 years.
You're not inviting him. Do you want to live?
No.
I don't care. This is my place of establishment. I would like you to leave. I am married to him, and I am going to talk to him. Dr. Needle from her, please. I need to talk to leave. Would you like to call to leave me? You can. Let's go. Please, okay? I'm going to talk to him.
Would you please call the police?
Are you asking me to?
No, John. I'm at the doctor's because Christy was at the doctor.
Right.
And I walked inside the doctor's office and the doctor's a little upset.
Right, okay.
People screaming outside and demanding to come in, and my daughter tried to push her and... Yeah, sure.
Right. Has this ever happened before?
No, it hasn't.
And this was a half-hour conversation that we had before.
Right.
Who knows?
Get the fuck out of here. Don't cause more trouble. You're already causing enough trouble.
You want to talk to me. You fucking Benjamin, motherfucker.
What do you care?
We care okay?
About what?
About Benjamin. About that my fucking
That really hurt him, right?
You better stop.
After you.
No idea. Okay?
Good. You made your point. Bye.
No. Fuck you, you're gonna stop it. You're gonna stop fighting with our lives and your fucking kids, okay?
I am not.
And with me. Yes, you are.
Why? Because she told me so?
No, that's right.
That's not gonna work,
Telling
Kathy.
you better stop. You better stop.
You better wake up.
No, you better fucking wake up.
Remember, her telling him to stop was literally just in reference to him showing up to see his son because he found out his son was diagnosed with cancer. That's what she's telling him to stop.
You better wake up to what's really going on.
You have no fucking idea, okay? I don't give a fuck. All I know is what you've been doing, and what you're doing now is committing SP acts every minute of every fucking day.
And if you think that has an effect on me, you're wrong.
By the way, does it sound like Cathy is grievously injured here? Does it sound like she suffered any broken bones? Does it sound like she has a separated shoulder or torn ligaments or anything like that? Does it sound like she's really worried about anything at all that has happened to her? It doesn't seem like it to me.
I'm not.
Who's talking now, Mike?
I'm telling you, you are going to stop.
And that's your ex-wife. Does she know that I'm recording this conversation?
Yes, they all know that you're recording this conversation, John.
You don't care. This is my calm cycle for you.
Tell them I'm happy to talk to you.
I'm listening to her. Listen to her, Mike.
Listen,
You have no idea.
oh, yes, I do.
And that's the problem.
Yes, I do. I have a very good idea.
You're fucking nuts, okay? It's danger time, and you have a fucking axe to grind, and you're not in present time.
That really impinged.
Yeah. I'm
That really
not
impinged.
on you.
That really
You're doing to us and affecting your entire family, okay? Because you are not going to do it anymore, and you're going to stop. Stop doing what you're doing. It isn't worth it, Mike. For what?
save you.
Oh, no. Fuck off. No.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate that.
Fucking way. You know it. You know it. Really? Everything you do. Yeah. That's your intention?
Oh, like I walked up and grabbed you?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, right. I will talk to you, Andrew. I have no problem talking to you. Do it. Hang on. Talk to me. I will talk to you. But I'm not going to talk to an audience. I'll talk to you in tea. I'll talk to you in tea. Good. Hang on. Let's do it. Okay. Bye, John. Thanks.
Bye.
Now, here is how Cathy describes the irreparable, permanent physical damage she suffered as a result of what you all just heard.
So we determined, yeah, we're going to go, and maybe 3-4 of his former associates and very good friends for decades who had concern about Mike as well. And Andrew, his brother, we went to see Mike. Upon seeing him for the first time, he immediately...
By the way, when the authorities questioned them about how they all ended up there, they actually denied intentionally going there. They basically made it sound like they were just driving past and happened to see Mike.
immediately was very unfriendly and obviously did not care to see us. So all of a sudden, he just grabbed my arms and crossed them in a vice. He was crushing me. I was pinned. I couldn't move. And he put his face right up to me and was screaming, "You bitch, you bitch." And then I could hear through my ear.
You guys heard how calm Mike was during that entire altercation. And anyway, you guys heard it.
My bones starting to crack. And I realized all of a sudden, oh my God, he is breaking my bones. And if I don't do something, he's going to do damage. And he just kept going, and I'm screaming at him to stop. And every time I screamed at him to stop it, because I could hear it, he did it harder. That he did like this. He went even tighter and pushed me down more. It was clear he did it in such a way that he was hiding it, like so he didn't want anyone else to see it. All of a sudden, not because I said stop, he just went like this and let go and did this and walked away in a huff. And I'm like, wow, that was psychotic. The whole thing was psychotic. So I'm like a little bit kind of in shock. Didn't expect that. And I turned around and saw blood at my feet in a little puddle and was sort of like, wow, where did that blood come from? And then I looked and it was pouring down my arm, down my fingers onto the ground. Mike had walked some feet away and I went and showed him, look what you did to me. Like, you just did this to me.
If Cathy walked into the doctor's office, if she walked into a doctor's office and she had blood pouring down her arm and dripping off her fingers, I think the doctor would have mentioned it like, do you need help? What is going on with you? I mean, instead, the doctor ordered her to leave the office.
And he said, I don't care. You know, in the manner Mike Rinder says that, which is pretty flippant. So an ambulance was called and they treated these immediate injuries. And then eventually after that, the thing very much swelled up and I couldn't move my arm at all or bend my elbow even. And this persisted. So I went to the doctor, of course, and various handlings were done to try physical therapy as a means of correcting that, of like massages and stuff and hot packs, all the routine handlings one would normally do. And over a period of many months, this did not improve it whatsoever. And I still had the same pain that I had initially. It ended up that he had actually pulled my right shoulder blade down, and it's permanently stuck there. Like my right shoulder blade is down, like it's not parallel with my left one. So there's this constant, it's been there ever since the day shoulder blade sit. But he also damaged a bone. The nerves, I had a hole in my arm here. I had all sorts of nerve damage up here. So the long and short of it is I had a MRI that showed what was really going on. I had surgery to correct it, correct that bone, handle as much of the other scar tissue and all sorts of stuff that had happened in there. But basically, the sum up of it is that to this day, even with all of that, and then follow-up physical therapy, I did eventually was able to move my arm.
Oh, it's a miracle.
But it's never going to be normal. It's like permanently to an exact point that they can't get it. It can't get any better. It's not going to. So it's permanently this way. Permanently, I have a permanent swelling, all sorts of stuff. And that's the way it is. And that is what I was left with as a result of Mike Rinder attacking me.
Okay, so on Jeff Augustine's blog, The Scientology Money Project, he has dug up some great documentation about this, including some of the documentation Scientology has tried to put forth. The paramedics were on scene for a total of 24 minutes. You can see here that the severity was marked out of choices of red, yellow, and green. It was marked green. Doesn't sound like a permanent debilitating bone injury to me. When asked what her pain was on a scale of 0 to 10, she said a 2. Also notice that here it shows that the scratch was below the elbow, and yet Cathy is constantly referring to her arm being immobilized, not being able to move her arm, having bone damage and whatnot, and yet the contact with her occurred on her forearm. I suspect that Cathy may have actually suffered an injury at the international base sometime after this incident occurred, possibly to her shoulder, and they decided to roll that in and include it as like some sort of a follow-on effect from having been scratched on the forearm. And I mentioned the possibility of her having genuinely suffered an injury later on because in a separate blog post that Jeff put up, he shows an MRI. I believe this MRI image, this is something Scientology itself has put out, and it shows some sort of a damage to the tendon or the ligaments of the shoulder here, except the date is April 2011, when the incident in question occurred in March of 2010. And anyway, the entire manufactured story that Scientology puts together completely falls apart in the face of the audio recording of the entire incident. You compare the audio recording to Cathy's version of the story, they're night and day, no similarity whatsoever. You have the paramedic report showing no problem with the shoulder, not even nothing going on up here, a 2 out of 10 pain. And in the face of all of the evidence that Scientology knows exists, disproving their story, they still march forward with the story anyway. I think it goes to something that I mentioned at the end of my video yesterday. They do this kind of stuff because it's all they can do. They're not able to sue people into oblivion like they used to do before they got their tax-exempt status back in 1993. Scientology hasn't actually sued anyone in decades other than Debbie Cook. And that turned out very, very badly for Scientology. They never attempted to sue the production company behind Scientology in the Aftermath. They didn't try to sue Leah for anything she said in her book. They haven't attempted to sue Mike Rinder or Leah Remini or any of the contributors to the Scientology in the Aftermath show for anything that's been said or written or published. And that's the kind of stuff Scientology used to actually take action on. They didn't care if their lawsuit had any merit. They just wanted to tie up your time. They wanted to tie up your money. They wanted to get you into discovery. They wanted to make your life a living hell. But since they can't really do that anymore, instead they do stupid bullshit like this. Sending out a bunch of mean tweets, putting up a bunch of mean websites. They'll still try to harass advertisers and do stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, Scientology will do whatever it can to get into your head and mess with you. They just don't have quite as much ammunition to be able to do that these days as they used to. So they're all freaking out over there in Camp Scientology because Mike's book is coming out. September 27th is the date. You can pre-order it now. You can also order the audiobook. Mike himself recorded the audiobook, so that's always cool. Audiobooks are my preference these days. In fact, on Mike's blog, he put up a note that said, today, September 7th, tomorrow and Friday, A Billion Years is available with a 25% discount at Barnes & Noble, and he provides a link. I'll put the same link below. So check it out, guys. The book is fantastic, and the more people buy it and read it, the more it will drive David Miscavige and all of his cronies absolutely crazy. All right, everyone, that's all I have. Thank you for watching. Thank you to all of you who watched until the very end, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.